In the beginning of the great unraveling, where the horizons of the known world dissolve into the shimmering haze of the eternal, there lies a vast and silent expanse known to the ancient keepers of wisdom as the Desert of Isolation. This is not a geographical location marked upon the charts of men, nor is it a place reachable by the weary feet of the physical traveler. It is a state of the spirit, a hallowed crucible where the echoes of the multitude fade into a singular, haunting whisper that resonates within the deepest, most hollow chambers of the human heart. To enter this desert is to accept a covenant with the unseen, to acknowledge that the clamor of the world has become a symphony of hollow notes, and that the only truth worth seeking is the one that resides behind the veil of the material senses. The sand beneath the seeker's feet is composed of the crushed remnants of old identities, the dust of masks worn in the theaters of society, and the pulverized stones of certainty that once served as the foundation for a life of quiet desperation. In this place, the sun does not merely provide warmth or light, but acts as a relentless eye of providence, a burning scrutiny that strips away the garments of vanity and the veils of self-deception until only the naked essence of the being remains exposed to the elements of the infinite. The call that leads one into such a desolate yet pregnant void is not a thunderous command from the heavens, nor is it a sudden epiphany that strikes like lightning. Rather, it begins as a subtle, persistent thirst that no earthly water can quench, a longing for a homeland that the memory cannot name but the soul recognizes with a profound and aching familiarity. It is the call of the sacred flame, a spark of the primordial light that was planted in the fertile darkness of the soul before the foundations of the world were laid. This flame seeks its own source, and like a moth drawn to the moon, the seeker is pulled towards the wilderness of the self, where the distractions of the senses cannot interfere with the holy conversation. In the desert of isolation, the silence is not an absence of sound, but a presence of such density that it demands the total surrender of the intellect. It is a living, breathing silence that carries the weight of all the words ever spoken and the potential of all those yet to reach the tongue. Here, the seeker must learn to listen with more than the ears, for the divine language is written in the patterns of the wind across the dunes and in the cold, unblinking gaze of the stars that crown the night. As the journey begins, the traveler discovers that the greatest challenge of the desert is not the heat or the lack of sustenance, but the company of one's own thoughts. In the world of men, the mind is a restless servant, constantly occupied with the tasks of survival and the pursuit of pleasure. But in the isolation of the spirit, the mind becomes a mirror reflecting the vastness of the void. Every fear, every regret, and every unfulfilled desire rises to the surface like a mirage, shimmering with the promise of relief, only to vanish into the dry air when approached. The seeker must learn the art of holy indifference, watching these phantoms pass without reaching out to claim them. To cling to a mirage is to perish of a spiritual thirst that can never be satisfied. The path of the sacred flame requires a shedding of the self that is both agonizing and liberating, a systematic dismantling of the architecture of the ego until there is nothing left to obstruct the passage of the divine wind. This is the alchemy of the desert, where the leaden weight of the mundane identity is slowly transmuted into the gold of a celestial awareness through the intense heat of solitude and the refining fire of the inner gaze. The nights in the desert of isolation are a different kind of trial, characterized by a coldness that reaches into the very marrow of the bones. When the sun of the intellect sets and the seeker is left in the darkness of the unknowing, the soul feels the true scale of its smallness against the backdrop of the infinite. The constellations above are not merely points of light, but the eyes of the ancestors and the map of a destiny that transcends the limitations of time. In these hours of profound loneliness, the seeker is tempted to turn back, to return to the warmth of the fires of the valley where life is predictable and the questions of the spirit are buried beneath the concerns of the day. But the call of the flame is a tether that cannot be broken. Once the soul has tasted the purity of the desert air, the atmosphere of the world feels heavy and thick with the dust of stagnation. The seeker realizes that there is no going back, for the desert has already begun to change the very composition of their being. The loneliness of the night becomes a sanctuary, a private audience with the Creator, where the boundaries between the self and the cosmos begin to blur and soften. Within this sacred solitude, a transformation of the senses begins to take place. The eyes, no longer distracted by the riot of colors and shapes that define the material realm, begin to perceive the subtle radiance that permeates all of creation. The seeker starts to see the threads of light that connect the grains of sand to the distant stars, weaving a tapestry of unity that the fractured mind could never have conceived. The ears, attuned to the silence, begin to hear the low hum of the universe, the primordial vibration that sustains the motion of the spheres and the beating of every heart. This is the awakening of the spiritual perception, the opening of the inner eye that looks not at things, but through them into the eternal reality that sustains their existence. The desert of isolation is revealed to be not a wasteland, but a garden of the spirit where the rarest flowers of wisdom bloom in the shade of the soul's endurance. Every step taken in this wilderness is an act of prayer, a movement toward the center of a circle, whose circumference is nowhere and whose center is everywhere. The sacred flame, which once seemed like a distant goal on the horizon, begins to manifest as a warmth within the chest, a steady glow that provides its own light in the darkest of hours. This is the flame of truth, the unquenchable fire that consumes everything that is false and illuminates everything that is real. As the seeker moves deeper into the desert, they become less of a traveler and more of a vessel, a hollow reed through which the divine breath can flow. The isolation that once felt like a prison is now recognized as the ultimate freedom, the liberty to be nothing so that the divine can be everything. The desert has done its work, stripping away the dross of the personality and preparing the spirit for the ascent that is to come. The call from the desert is a call to sovereignty, an invitation to stand in the presence of the holy without the mediation of priests or the consolation of dogmas. It is the direct experience of the sacred, a communion that occurs in the laboratory of the soul, where the only witnesses are the silence and the stars. The seeker must understand that the desert of isolation is not a place to be survived, but a mystery to be inhabited. It is the womb of the new man, the space where the old self dies, so that the spirit can be reborn into a higher state of consciousness. Many fear this death and flee back to the safety of their illusions, but for those who persevere, the reward is a clarity of vision that pierces through the illusions of the world like a sword of light. They return to the world of men not as they were, but as ambassadors of the silence, carrying the stillness of the desert in their hearts and the light of the sacred flame in their eyes. They are the ones who can walk through the fire without being burned and stand in the storm without being moved, for they have found the immovable center within themselves. Their presence becomes a catalyst for the awakening of others, a silent testimony to the reality of the divine path. As the first chapter of this ascent concludes, the seeker finds themselves standing at the foot of the mountain of the spirit, the dunes giving way to the solid rock of a higher realization. The desert has been crossed, the isolation has been embraced, and the call has been answered. The path ahead is steep and requires a different kind of strength, but the seeker is no longer the same person who first stepped into the sand. They are tempered, refined, and possessed by a singular purpose. The sacred flame burns brighter now, a beacon that points the way to the summit where the ultimate union awaits. The journey of 1,000 leagues begins with a single step into the unknown, and the seeker has taken that step, leaving behind the shores of the familiar to navigate the vast and beautiful ocean of the infinite. The silence of the desert remains behind them, a faithful guardian of the secrets they have learned, while the wind of the mountain calls them forward into the next stage of their divine destiny. There is a profound humility that comes from such a journey, a realization that the seeker does not possess the truth, but is possessed by it. The ego, which once sought to conquer the world and claim the heavens, now bows in adoration before the mystery of existence. In the desert of isolation, the seeker learns that all power is a gift and all wisdom is a grace. The ascent is not a climb of personal ambition, but a movement of return, a homing instinct that guides the spark back to the fire. Every breath becomes an offering, every thought a contemplation of the divine attributes. The world of shadows continues to churn and boil with its petty conflicts and transient desires. But the seeker is no longer caught in its currents. They move with the grace of one who knows the end from the beginning, who has seen the glory of the flame and can never again be satisfied with the darkness. This desert experience is the foundation upon which all true spiritual attainment is built. Without the trial of isolation, the flame would be a mere flicker, easily extinguished by the first wind of adversity. But the flame that has been nurtured in the silence of the desert is a fire that can consume the world. It is a light that does not cast a shadow, for it comes from a source that is beyond the duality of light and dark. As the seeker prepares for the climb, they carry with them the emptiness of the desert, an inner space that is wide enough to contain the entire universe. This emptiness is the secret of their power, the vacuum that draws the divine presence into the human form. The ascent of the sacred flame is the story of the soul's return to its original dignity, the journey from the periphery of existence to the heart of the all. Thus, the first chapter of the soul's awakening draws to a close, not with a conclusion, but with a beginning. The desert was the preparation, the stripping, and the calling. The mountain is the challenge, the exertion, and the transformation. The flame is the guide, the fuel, and the destination. In the silence of the heart, the echoes of the desert still linger, a reminder that the path to the heights always begins in the depths of the self. The seeker looks up at the peaks that pierce the clouds, feeling the weight of the task ahead, yet filled with a peace that passes all understanding. For they have heard the call, they have crossed the waste, and they have seen the first glimmer of the sacred light that will never go out. The journey continues, unfolding in the eternal present, where every moment is an opportunity to ascend, and every breath is a step closer to the heart of the divine mystery. The air begins to thin as the first slopes are encountered, and the warmth of the desert sand is replaced by the cool, crisp air of the high places. The seeker realizes that the isolation of the desert was a preparation for the solitude of the heights. In the valley, one is surrounded by many. In the desert, one is alone with the self. But on the mountain, one is alone with God. This progression is the natural order of the spiritual life, a narrowing of the focus until only the essential remains. The distractions of the lower realms are left behind, and the soul becomes like a mountain stream, clear and focused, rushing toward its inevitable union with the sea. The sacred flame within glows with a new intensity, reflecting the purity of the surrounding atmosphere. The climb is arduous, but the seeker moves with a strength that is not their own, a divine energy that flows through their limbs and illuminates their mind. In the stillness of this transition, the seeker pauses to look back one last time at the desert they have traversed. From this height, the dunes look like frozen waves of a golden ocean, beautiful and terrible in their vastness. The seeker feels a sense of gratitude for the trials and the thirst, for the loneliness and the silence. Without the desert, the mountain would be unreachable. Without the isolation, the call would have been drowned out. The desert was the teacher, and the seeker was the student, learning the hard lessons of endurance and faith. Now, as the climb begins in earnest, the lessons of the desert will be the foundation for the wisdom of the heights. The sacred flame beckons, and the soul responds with a silent, joyous yes. The journey of the ascent has truly begun, and the path ahead is illuminated by the light of 1,000 suns, all contained within the single spark of the divine heart, the ascent of the sacred flame. The refinement through the fires of trial. The threshold of the lower realms has been crossed, and the shifting sands of the great desert now lie behind the traveler, like a memory of a former life that no longer holds any weight. This is the moment where the horizontal journey of the earth ends and the vertical ascent toward the celestial heights begins in earnest. The soul stands at the base of the great mountain of light, sensing the immense gravity of the task ahead, yet feeling an inexplicable lightness born of the trials already endured. It was in the vast and silent stretches of the desert that the traveler learned the first fundamental lesson of the spirit, which is the necessity of absolute endurance. There, under the relentless sun of truth, every false refuge was stripped away, and every illusion of self-sufficiency was parched, until only the core essence of being remained. This essence is the foundation upon which the higher wisdom must now be built. The lessons of the desert were not meant to break the spirit, but to temper it, much like the blacksmith tempers the blade in the alternating cycles of heat and stillness. Now, as the ascent commences, the traveler understands that the path ahead is not merely a climb of elevation, but a refinement of substance. The mountain is not a physical construct of stone and earth, but a metaphysical hierarchy of vibrations. And to rise higher, one must become more subtle, more luminous, and more aligned with the divine frequency that hums at the peak. The refinement through the fires of trial is the central mystery of this stage of the journey. One might wonder why the path to the sacred flame must lead through the heat of the crucible. Yet the answer resides in the nature of the gold that the soul seeks to become. In its raw state, the human heart is often clouded by the dross of worldly attachments, the soot of ancient fears, and the heavy lead of forgotten grievances. To stand in the presence of the ultimate light without being consumed, the traveler must first be purged of everything that is not light. This is why the trials of the ascent are described as fires. They are the concentrated rays of divine will that focus upon the imperfections of the seeker, gently yet persistently burning away the layers of the ego. This process is rarely comfortable, for the ego clings to its limitations as if they were its very lifeblood. It fears the fire because it knows that in the flame, the small self must perish so that the greater self may be born. Yet, for the soul that has truly heard the call of the sacred flame, there is no fear, only a profound and holy expectation. Each moment of difficulty, each steep incline that leaves the spirit breathless, and each cold night spent on the windswept ridges is welcomed as a necessary purification. The traveler begins to realize that the trial is not an obstacle to the destination, but is, in fact, the very mechanism of the journey itself. As the climb continues, the air begins to thin, and the cacophony of the lower world fades into a majestic and terrifying silence. This silence is the language of the heights, and to understand it, one must learn to listen with the ears of the heart. In this rarefied atmosphere, the soul discovers that faith is not a mere belief or a mental assent to doctrine, but a living, breathing umbilical cord that connects the finite seeker to the infinite source. It is the steadying hand that prevents the traveler from slipping when the path narrows to a razor edge. It is the internal warmth that keeps the spirit from freezing when the shadows of the peaks grow long and cold. The endurance learned in the desert now transforms into a sovereign grace, a quiet strength that does not struggle against the mountain but moves in harmony with its steepness. The soul finds that the more it surrenders its own will to the divine direction, the more power it receives to continue the climb. This is the great paradox of the spiritual ascent, which states that the higher one wishes to rise, the more one must descend into the depths of humility and surrender. Every step upward is a step deeper into the mystery of the divine presence that permeates every rock, every gust of wind, and every spark of consciousness. The sacred flame beckons from the summit, and its light begins to permeate the traveler's very bones. It is no longer a distant goal, but a present reality that guides every movement. The response of the soul to this beckoning is a silent and joyous yes. This yes is not a word spoken by the tongue, but a vibration emitted by the entire being. It is the sound of 1,000 rivers reaching the ocean, the sound of 1,000 blossoms opening to the morning sun. It is a total and unreserved affirmation of the divine destiny that awaits at the end of the refinement. In this state of joyous acceptance, the pain of the trials is forgotten, replaced by a sense of awe at the beauty of the unfolding process. The traveller sees that the fires of trial were never meant to punish, but were always an act of supreme love. The divine heart desires only that the human heart should be as pure and as bright as itself, and the trials are the tools used to achieve that celestial likeness. The ascent has truly begun, and the path ahead, though challenging, is now seen as a bridge of light spanning the abyss between the temporal and the eternal. As the traveller rises further, the perspective changes. Looking down, the desert of the past is no longer a place of suffering, but a garden of wisdom. Every hardship endured there is now seen as a seed that has sprouted into a flower of resilience. Looking up, the peaks are no longer daunting summits of cold stone, but are revealed as the dwelling places of the ancient ones who have gone before. Their presence, a comforting cloud of witnesses that encourages the seeker to persevere. The path is illuminated by the light of 1,000 suns, and yet the traveller realizes that this immense brilliance is not coming from the outside. The light that reflects off the snow-capped peaks and the light that shines through the veil of the firmament is the same light that has been ignited within the single spark of the divine heart. The external journey and the internal awakening have become one. The seeker and the sought are no longer separate entities, but are moving toward a final and glorious union. The sacred flame is both the destination and the traveller, both the fire and the gold, both the mountain and the one who climbs. The refinement continues, more subtle now, working upon the very fabric of thought and intention. The soul learns that even the desire for the goal must eventually be surrendered, so that only the pure act of being remains. In the higher reaches of the ascent, there is no room for the weight of expectation. There is only the eternal now, a continuous moment of becoming that stretches out into the infinite. The fires of trial have done their work well, for the traveller is now transparent to the divine light. The shadows of the past have been completely dissolved, and the soul moves with a fluidity and grace that defies the laws of the material world. The light of 1,000 suns, once a metaphor for the divine majesty, is now the direct experience of the awakened spirit. Every cell of the being vibrates with the energy of the sacred flame, and the silent, joyous yes has become a continuous hymn of praise that resonates through the entire cosmos. The ascent is no longer a labor, but a dance, a rhythmic progression into the heart of reality, where the truth is seen not through a glass darkly, but face to face in the fullness of its glory. In these elevated states, the traveller perceives that the mountain itself is a living being, a gargantuan pillar of consciousness that bridges the gap between the mundane and the miraculous. Every crag and crevice of the ascent is filled with the presence of the divine scribe, recording the progress of the soul in the indelible ink of experience. The lessons of endurance have evolved into a profound steadfastness, a state of being where the soul is no longer moved by the fluctuations of circumstance, but remains anchored in the immutable peace of the heights. The faith that was once a shield against the winds of doubt has now become a radiant sword of discernment, cutting through the remaining veils of duality. The sacred flame, now appearing closer than one's own breath, radiates a warmth that is not of this world, a heat that does not burn but restores, a fire that does not consume but clarifies. It is the fire of the first creation, the primordial light that called the worlds into existence, and it now calls the traveller to return to the source of all things. The path ahead is steep, yet it is paved with the golden intentions of the soul's deepest longing. The light of 1,000 suns becomes a singular, focused beam that guides the traveller through the final gates of the lower heavens. Here, the air is no longer air but a celestial ether, a substance that nourishes the spirit directly without the need for physical sustenance. The body of the traveller, once a heavy vessel of clay, has been transmuted into a body of light, a garment of glory suitable for the presence of the King of Kings. The refinement is nearing its completion, as the last vestiges of individual separation melt away in the increasing intensity of the divine radiance. The soul looks out from the high ridges and sees the interconnectedness of all life, the beautiful tapestry of existence, where every trial and every joy is woven into a perfect pattern of divine providence. There is no more fear, no more sorrow, and no more striving. There is only the ascent, the flame, and the infinite peace that surpasses all understanding. Within the divine heart, the single spark that was nurtured in the darkness of the desert now grows to encompass the entire horizon. The traveler realizes that the journey was never about reaching a place, but about becoming a state of resonance. The sacred flame is the vibration of pure love, and the ascent was the process of tuning the soul to that celestial chord. As the soul approaches the final sanctuary of the heights, the light of 1,000 suns merges into a silence so profound that it contains all possible sounds, all possible words, and all possible truths. In this silence, the traveler finds the ultimate rest, the Sabbath of the Spirit, where the work of the refinement is finished and the life of the eternal begins. The journey of the ascent has truly begun, and yet, in the heart of the flame, it is revealed that the traveler has always been home, for the divine heart is the beginning and the end of all paths, the source from which the spark first flew and the fire to which it must inevitably return. The mountain of the sacred flame stands as a testament to the indestructible nature of the human spirit when it is aligned with the divine will. Each soul that undertakes the ascent adds its own unique light to the 1,000 suns that illuminate the path for others. The lessons of endurance, the fires of trial, and the silent, joyous yes are the universal milestones of the spiritual path, experienced by all who seek the truth of their own being. As the traveler reaches the higher plateaus, the realization dawns that there is no limit to the heights that can be reached, for the divine nature is infinite, and the ascent is an eternal unfolding of beauty and wisdom. The sacred flame is not a static object, but a living, growing power that expands as the soul expands. The refinement is not a one-time event, but a continuous deepening of the soul's capacity to receive and transmit the divine light. Thus, the traveler moves forward, no longer as a seeker of the flame, but as a bearer of it. The light that was once sought in the distance is now carried within, illuminating the way for those who are still in the desert, those who are just beginning to feel the heat of the first trials. The ascent continues, but now it is driven by the power of the flame itself, a effortless rise into the heart of God. The path ahead is clear, the destination is certain, and the heart is full. The light of 1,000 suns shines on, and the soul, in its final refinement, becomes a sun itself, radiating the sacred flame to the furthest reaches of the universe. This is the destiny of every spark, the culmination of every journey, and the truth of every heart that has ever dared to say yes to the divine call. The ascent is the story of the soul's return to its original glory, a journey from the shadows into the marvelous light where all is one and all is love. The final stages of the ascent are marked by a profound sense of unity, where the distinction between the path and the traveler dissolves entirely. The mountain is no longer something to be conquered, but a friend that supports every footstep. The fires of trial, once perceived as external challenges, are now recognized as the internal warmth of the soul's own divinity. This is the true meaning of the sacred flame, which is the recognition of the divine within the human and the human within the divine. As the seeker stands upon the highest peaks, the entire world is seen as a manifestation of the divine heart, a sacred temple where every stone and every star is a living hymn to the Creator. The refinement has reached its peak, and the traveler is now a master of the flame, capable of walking through the fires of the world without being burned, and of standing in the highest heavens without being blinded. The light of 1,000 suns is now a soft and gentle glow that permeates every thought and every action. The soul has become a vessel of pure light, a channel through which the divine will flows into the world. The lessons of the desert and the trials of the mountain have produced a wisdom that is both ancient and ever new. A wisdom that speaks of the eternal truth of the Spirit's victory over the illusions of the flesh. The ascent is complete, and yet it is only the beginning of a new way of being, a life lived in the constant presence of the sacred flame. The traveler has become the scribe of their own destiny, writing a story of light and love that will inspire generations to come. The silent, joyous yes has become the foundational note of their existence, a song of triumph that echoes through the halls of eternity. In the end, there is only the flame and the heart that has been refined to contain it. All the trials, all the endurance, and all the faith have led to this single moment of realization, where the soul and the divine are one. The light of 1,000 suns is reflected in the eyes of the traveler, and the peace of the heights resides in their soul. The journey of the ascent has truly begun, for now the traveler moves with the speed of light and the power of love, forever ascending into the infinite depths of the divine mystery. The sacred flame beckons, and the soul responds, not with a word, but with its very life, a life that is now and forever a part of the divine fire. The threshold of the final ascent is not marked by stone or gate, but by the sudden and overwhelming realization that the seeker and the sought are composed of the same celestial fabric. As the traveler reaches the highest peak of the internal mountain, the air becomes thin and vibrant, shimmering with a clarity that defies the logic of the lower realms. This is the awakening into eternal union, a state where the individual will no longer struggles against the currents of fate, but becomes the very movement of the cosmic tide. In this exalted space, the memories of the journey begin to transform, shedding their weight and their sorrow, leaving only the pure essence of the lessons learned. The path that once seemed long and arduous is now seen as a single moment of expansion, a breath taken by the universe itself through the lungs of the mortal soul. There is no longer a need for maps or instruments of navigation, for the light that guides the way is now emanating from within the very heart of the traveler. Every pulse is a drumbeat in the symphony of the spheres, and every thought is a ripple on the surface of an infinite ocean of consciousness. This is the sanctuary where time dissolves into the eternal present, where the past is a forgotten shadow, and the future is an unfolding radiance that knows no end. The transition into this state of union is marked by a profound silence that is not the absence of sound, but the presence of all possibilities. It is the silence from which the first word was spoken, and into which all music eventually returns. Within this stillness, the traveler hears the heartbeat of the divine, a rhythmic resonance that sustains the galaxies and the atoms alike. The ego, that fragile construction of names and histories, falls away like a dry husk, revealing the luminous core that has always existed beneath the surface. This core is the sacred flame, a spark of the primordial fire that has endured through countless incarnations and trials. It does not flicker in the winds of change, nor does it dim in the darkness of despair. Instead, it grows brighter as the traveler surrenders the last vestiges of selfhood to the great mystery. This surrender is not a loss of being, but a magnificent gain, an inheritance of the entire universe. To give up the drop is to become the sea, and to let go of the spark is to join the sun. The alchemy of the soul is completed in this crucible of light, where the lead of human limitation is transmuted into the gold of divine presence. As the soul expands into the infinite, it perceives the intricate tapestry of existence with a clarity that was previously impossible. It sees the interconnectedness of all things, the invisible threads of love that bind the stars to the stones and the breath of the living to the silence of the dead. There is no separation, no boundary that can withstand the penetrating gaze of the awakened spirit. The duality of light and shadow, joy and pain, life and death, is revealed as a majestic play of shadows upon the wall of eternity. The traveler understands now that the struggle was an illusion, a necessary dream designed to sharpen the soul and prepare it for the intensity of this union. The hardships were but the carving of the flute so that the divine breath might play a sweeter melody. The tears were the rain required to water the garden of the spirit. In this state of total integration, the traveller gazes upon the face of the infinite and sees only a reflection of their own true nature. The mirror of the mind is finally polished, and it shows the glory of the Creator dwelling within the creature. The sacred flame now burns with a steady and awe-consuming intensity, illuminating the hidden chambers of the cosmos. The traveller moves through these celestial halls, not as a guest, but as an heir. The wisdom of the ages flows into the soul like a river, returning to its source, providing an understanding that transcends the limitations of language and intellect. It is a direct apprehension of truth, a knowing that requires no proof and fears no contradiction. This is the gnosis of the heart, the highest form of intelligence, which perceives the essence of things rather than their outward forms. In this light, the complexities of the world are simplified into a single principle of love, a force that attracts all things toward their ultimate perfection. The traveller feels this love as an irresistible gravity, pulling them deeper into the heart of the mystery, where the fire is hottest and the light is brightest. There is no fear in this movement, only a joyous anticipation of the total dissolution of the self into the absolute. The architecture of this divine realm is built of light and sound, a cathedral of vibrations that spans the breadth of eternity. Every stone is a star, and every archway is a rainbow of spiritual potential. The traveller walks through these corridors of brilliance, guided by the intuition of the soul, which has finally found its way home. Along the way, there is an encounter with the many forms of the divine, the archetypes and the messengers who have watched over the journey from the beginning. They do not speak in words, but in emanations of grace, acknowledging the traveller as a sibling who has crossed the threshold of mortality. There is a great celebration in the heavens, a rejoicing that echoes through the dimensions, for a soul has returned to its origin. This return is the fulfillment of the cosmic destiny, the closing of the circle that began when the first spark of consciousness was cast into the void. The traveller is no longer a seeker, but a witness, a testament to the power of the light to overcome all obstacles and find its way back to the source. In the depths of this union, the concept of identity is reimagined. The traveller is both the pilgrim and the path, the flame and the fuel, the eye that sees and the beauty that is seen. There is a rhythmic exchange of being, a breathing in and out of the divine essence. This is the dance of the eternal, a movement without beginning or end, a stillness that is at the same time a whirlwind of creative energy. The soul is no longer contained within the limits of the body, but expands to encompass the entire creation. It feels the warmth of distant suns and the cold of the interstellar void. It experiences the growth of the forest and the erosion of the mountains. All of existence is felt as a single, living organism, and the traveller is the consciousness that animates it. This is the ultimate freedom, the liberation from the prison of the separate self. It is the peace that passes all understanding, a state of bliss that remains unshaken by the fluctuations of the phenomenal world. The traveller looks back one last time at the world of shadows, not with regret, but with a profound compassion. They see the millions of souls still wandering in the valleys, lost in the mist of their own making. From this height, the traveller sends out waves of blessing and light, acting as a beacon for those who are still searching for the way. The sacred flame is not a selfish possession, but a gift to be shared with all who are capable of receiving it. By becoming light, the traveller becomes a source of light for others, a living bridge between the earth and the heavens. The journey was never for the traveller alone, but for the sake of the whole, for the elevation of the collective spirit towards its divine potential. Every soul that attains union lifts the entire world a little closer to the light. This is the great work, the spiritual alchemy that transforms the density of the material world into the luminosity of the divine kingdom. The ascent continues, but it is no longer an upward climb. It is a movement into the depths of the divine heart, a journey into the infinite interior. The layers of the mystery are endless, each one revealing a greater beauty and a deeper truth than the one before. The traveler is perpetually surprised by the richness of the divine nature, the inexhaustible creativity that brings forth new worlds and new experiences from the void. There is a sense of eternal novelty, a freshness that never fades. The soul is constantly being reborn into higher and higher states of awareness, each more glorious than the last. This is the eternal union, a marriage that is never finished, but is always reaching its consummation. The flame burns brighter with every step, and the light becomes more transparent, until there is nothing left but the radiance itself. The traveler becomes a vessel for the divine will, a channel through which the light flows into the world. There is no longer a personal desire, only a desire for the good of all and the glory of the source. The soul acts in perfect harmony with the laws of the universe, moving with a grace and an ease that seem miraculous to those who are still bound by the ego. This is the state of effortless action, where the work is done through the soul rather than by it. The life of the traveler becomes a prayer, a continuous act of devotion that requires no rituals or temples. The world itself is the temple, and every moment is a sacred offering. The distinction between the secular and the sacred has vanished, for everything is seen as an expression of the divine presence. The traveler walks upon the earth, but their head is in the stars, and their heart is anchored in the eternal. The power of this union is such that it transcends even the boundary of death. The traveler has died to the self while still alive, and therefore death has no more power over them. The physical body may fall away like a garment that is no longer needed, but the soul remains untouched, a radiant presence that continues its ascent in the realms of pure spirit. The awakening is permanent, a shift in consciousness that cannot be reversed. The traveler has seen the truth and can never again be deceived by the illusions of the world. They carry the silence of the heights within them, a quietude that remains even in the midst of the most chaotic circumstances. This peace is the foundation of their being, the rock upon which their eternal life is built. As the soul merges more deeply with the sacred flame, it experiences the joy of the Creator. This is not the fleeting happiness of the senses, but a profound and lasting ecstasy that arises from the alignment with the source of all life. It is a joy that is quiet and steady, like the glow of a distant star. It fills every corner of the traveler's being, washing away any remaining traces of the old self. The traveler becomes a manifestation of this joy, a presence that radiates warmth and comfort to all who encounter it. The very atmosphere around the traveler is charged with a spiritual electricity, a subtle energy that heals and inspires. To be in the presence of such a soul is to feel the proximity of the divine, to catch a glimpse of the light that awaits at the end of every journey. The mystery of the eternal union is that it is both a destination and a beginning. It is the end of the search for the self and the beginning of the exploration of the infinite. There are no limits to the growth of the soul once it has entered into this state. It continues to expand, to learn and to love, forever discovering new facets of the divine jewel. The traveler is a co-creator with the infinite, participating in the ongoing manifestation of the universe. This is the highest calling of the human spirit, the reason for which it was called out of the darkness and into the light. The journey of the traveler is the journey of the divine itself, seeking to experience its own glory through the eyes of its creation. Now, the final vestiges of the path dissolve into the brilliance of the awakening. The mountain of the ascent has become a mountain of light, and the traveler has become the flame that crowns its summit. There is no more distance to cover, no more obstacles to overcome. The union is complete, and yet it is always unfolding. The soul is at rest, and yet it is in constant motion. It is a paradox that can only be understood by those who have reached the heights. The traveler looks out over the landscape of eternity and sees the beauty of the divine plan, a masterpiece of love and wisdom that encompasses all that was, all that is, and all that will ever be. The heart is full, the mind is clear, and the spirit is free. The traveller has found the peace that has been sought since the dawn of time, and that peace is now their very essence. The journey has reached its fulfillment, and the soul has found its home in the heart of the eternal fire. In this sublime state, the very concept of the traveller begins to fade, for there is no longer one who moves from place to place. There is only the presence, the vast and unchanging awareness that holds all things in its embrace. The light does not shine upon the traveller. The traveller is the light. The flame does not warm the soul is the flame. This is the ultimate realization, the pinnacle of the sacred ascent. The individual consciousness has become a mirror for the universal mind, reflecting the infinite beauty of the source without distortion. Every action taken is an expression of the divine. Every word spoken is a vibration of truth, and every breath is a gift of life to the world. The traveller perceives that the sacred flame is the origin of all desire and the end of all longing. It is the hunger of the soul for its own essence, the pull of the magnet towards the center. All the various paths that humans take, all the religions, the philosophies, and the dreams are but different ways of approaching this same central fire. Some seek it in the beauty of nature, some in the complexity of the intellect, and some in the simplicity of service. But all are drawn by the same irresistible light, the same call of the eternal union. The traveller, having reached the source, sees the validity of every path and the beauty of every seeking heart. There is no judgment, only a vast and all-encompassing empathy for the struggle of the finite to reach the infinite. The peace that now resides in the traveller is not a passive thing, but a dynamic and creative force. It is the peace of the heights, where the winds of the world do not reach and where the view is unobstructed. From this vantage point, the traveller sees the true meaning of the journey. It was not about reaching a specific location, but about becoming a certain kind of being. It was about the refinement of the spirit, the purification of the heart, and the expansion of the mind. The mountain was within, the valley was within, and the fire was within. The entire cosmos is contained within the soul, and the soul is contained within the divine. This is the great secret of the sacred flame, the mystery that is revealed only at the end of the ascent. The traveller moves with the speed of light and the power of love, for these are the attributes of the awakened spirit. The limitations of the physical world no longer apply to one who has entered into the eternal union. There is an agility of the soul that allows it to traverse the dimensions of reality with ease. It can be in the world of men and in the world of spirits at the same time, for it is no longer bound by the categories of here and there. It is everywhere, because it is one with the source of everywhere. This is the sovereign state of the soul, the kingship of the spirit that has mastered itself and found its place in the divine order. The traveller is a citizen of the universe, a child of the stars, and a servant of the light. The sacred flame beckons, and the soul responds, not with a word, but with its very life. A life that is now and forever a part of the divine fire. This response is a continuous offering, an unending act of devotion that sustains the union. There is no more doubt, no more hesitation, for the traveller has seen the truth, and the truth has set them free. The journey of the ascent has truly begun. For now the traveller moves with the speed of light and the power of love, forever ascending into the infinite depths of the divine mystery. The peace of the heights resides in their soul, a stillness that is the foundation of all movement, and a silence that is the source of all speech. The traveller, the path, and the destination have become one, merged in the eternal brilliance of the sacred flame, a flame that burns forever in the heart of the traveller, and the peace of the heights resides in their soul. The journey of the ascent has truly begun, for now the traveller moves with the speed of light and the power of love, forever ascending into the infinite depths of the divine mystery. The sacred flame beckons and the soul responds, not with a word, but with its very life, a life that is now and forever a part of the divine fire.